Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I've read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest, a CEO that ships AI products enterprise actually use. Founder, CEO, NED, and surfer. No other than Mr. Fergus Dyer Smith.
Hello.
Welcome, Mr. Fergus. I'm Book 101 Review, and can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Well, you got most of it. So, as you rightly say, my name's Fergus. Founded a number of companies, worked in technology most of my adult life in various different parts of that. Most recently, run product at a company called MSQ, building out AI solutions that essentially work across the advertising and marketing landscape.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Fergus. Thank you. And today let's talk about deployment over demos. Why most AI products fail after launch. So tell us, demos, or what is the most seductive illusion of a perfect AI demo and that sets teams up for a failure when they are tried to deploy?
Well, I think that the issue is, especially right now, is that it's very easy to get to quite convincing products. And so what I mean by that is that they sort of work on the outside, but the speed of being able to engineer the technology, I guess, it doesn't necessarily link to their success. So what I mean by that is if you've gone through the product process too quickly and haven't done the heavy lifting at the beginning, which is a lot more about talking to customers, understanding problems, really understanding why your product should exist, then when your product lands, it lands flat, and in many cases just won't get enabled or won't get rolled out. So I think that's one place. And then the second is that not enough attention gets paid to the actual rollout of the product itself. So once you have got a product out into people's hands, the temptation is to sort of to give it to everyone as quickly as possible, which can work. But in my experience, generally speaking, especially with an enterprise, you need to have a much more staggered and staged rollout plan, essentially. So, I think they're the two biggest reasons anyway.
Mr. Fergus, beyond technical bugs, what are the most common non technical failures, ethical, operational, or business related, that cause a well built AI model to stumble after launch?
I'm not sure. Well, the model itself, the models generally, they're pretty robust. But there's definitely, operational, I would say, is one of the biggest fall downs. And if you think about it, inside an organization of, especially beyond a certain size, everyone is spinning many plates. And so any new workload or new functionality that you're bringing into that team creates disruption. And they probably have some organization and some workflows already mapped out. They probably already have processes in place. And in essence, you deploying some new piece of technology, whether it's AI or not, is going to somehow disrupt that. And so even though on the other side of that rollout is likely more productivity and less lift, you still got to go through the process of change, and that can be painful because people don't like to change and they can't see the benefit at the point in time. And so we often talk about with AI, and it's as much about, and AI in particular, it's as much about change management as it is about developing or rolling out a new piece of technology. So I think operations, the biggest, to your question, the sort of biggest miss is not really understanding the workflows that occur in your business. And that's just because a lot of the time they're not mapped out. No one's ever actually asked that question, like what is the flow that we go through in order to get to the end result. So if you haven't asked the question, then you can't answer it, right? So if you don't have any
Yes,
questions.
definitely. And Mr. Fergus, in the primary cause of failure, that teams are solving the wrong problem with AI, or they are solving the right problem in a completely controlled, unrealistic environment.
Sorry, say that again. I just misunderstood the question.
Yeah, it's the primary cause of the failure that teams are solving the wrong problem with AI, or they are solving the right problem in a completely controlled, unrealistic environment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. Solving uh, the wrong question, if you like, or trying to or trying I guess a spin on that is you have a solution and you're looking for problems to solve with it, which is sort of getting the cart before the horse, as they say. It's or the other I guess the other sort of expression, isn't it? If from a man with a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. So it's if you've got this really powerful technology, you're desperate to deploy it because you can see the power of this thing. So you're out there looking for problems, and it's just the wrong way to look at things. It's almost you've got to forget the tooling that you have and look for the problems first. And once you found the problem, you can then sort of refer back to the tooling. So yeah, I think your point around sort of solving the wrong problem is bang on the money, really.
Mr. Fergus, how does the move fast and break things startup mentality directly conflict with that required to responsibly and successfully deploy an AI product?
Yeah, so the move fast and break things, famously came out of Facebook in the early days, and even they, at a certain point, had to drop that. And I think they moved to something like move fast, but with solid architecture or something like that. Um, but early on in software, what they really mean is learn fast. That's sort of what they're saying. It's like try a lot of things. It doesn't have to be perfect, but the more information, the more data points we have, the quicker we're going to understand what works and what doesn't work. I guess the issue with AI is that it's so powerful that there's a concern that you can't necessarily move fast and break things, because breaking things could be catastrophic. So you deploy a bunch of agents into a financial institution, and that could wreak all sorts of havoc. So I think that adage perhaps is a little bit outdated, although totally understand where it comes from, and it still does probably stand for some early stage startups. But I think if you're deploying very powerful technology into environments where a lot of damage can be done, then it's not probably the direction you should take.
Yes, definitely. And what does a minimum viable product AI look like when designed for deployment versus a design just for a demo? What was must be included from day one?
Well, you might argue that the idea of the MVP um, may have may have had its day to a certain degree. So if the reason why minimum viable product existed, if you like, was because there was resources and time and money required to get products out of the door. And so rather than spending 2 years building some sort of perfect solution, and the MVP, the minimum viable product, sort of made famous by the Eric Ries and people like that. That whole idea was, well, let's build the absolute minimum we need to solve the problem, put it in front of customers, and have them react, so we can then again learn in a very tight, short product cycle. But that limiting factor, especially in software, is slowly being eroded because we can build products very, very quickly. And so I just think what what a minimum viable product looks like is perhaps different now, just because we can build a product in a couple of hours, put it in front of customers, build another one, put it in front of customers. You can very quickly iterate through the opportunity. So I think that the notion of the MVP is somewhat different now, and in fact, you may not even be able to get away with an MVP because maybe it's not the minimum viable product. You need a viable product. That's the bit that you really do need, but perhaps it needs to be a little bit further for customers and audiences to take you seriously.
To take it seriously, for sure. And Mr. Fergus, can you walk us through a critical last mile challenge like data drift, user Facebook loops, or integration latency that rarely appears in a demo but becomes a massive hurdle at the scale?
Mm, yeah, I mean, I think in the demo, I think the things that you can, especially with AI products, that you can perhaps miss, but will become problems at scale, is you get drift inside agentic systems, and a drift as it moves through sort of agent nodes gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So it can start off very small, and by the time you get to an end result, it can be quite large. You get sort of context rot, which you're starting to hear a lot about, which is, for these systems to work, they have to have knowledge. To give them knowledge, then you need to be feeding them with information and documents and things like this. And the more and more context you give to an LLM, the longer you run it, it can start to essentially the results start to deteriorate. So I suspect these things are going to get better and better. In fact, we had GPT 5.2 came out yesterday or today, and that has improved a lot of those things. But yeah, in a demo, you're only going to see a very, very small sample of what the ultimate system is going to be able to deliver. Once you get it scale into hundreds or thousands of users, the aggregate outcome can be a lot different.
Mr. Fergus, tell us, in your experience, what is the single most underestimated line item in terms of time, cost, and effort when taking an AI model from the prototype to production?
Probably QCing. So I think the models they're so, or QAing, the models are so convincing that if you run them a couple of times, it can look like it's really nailed its delivery, and it's tempting, very tempting to sort of then move on to the next step. But actually, you're seeing again a small sample size of the hundreds of times it might run, and so it's really worth taking the time to QA the output from a model, especially from an agent-based system. That it's just so tempting to move on to the next step and then sort of not do that, and then obviously as we just talked about, you get drift or you get these sort of compounding effects. So that's the bit I think that people underestimate, the amount of time that you do actually need to spend with these systems QAing the results, just making sure that they're delivering at least some acceptable number of times the sort of result that you'd expect.
Mr. Fergus, what are your short term and long term goals? As a CEO, as a NAD, a surfer, or a CEO that ships AI products?
Well, short-term goals, as much surfing as I can get in a period of time. I love building products, and I think there's never been a more exciting time to be in that space. I'm fortunate that I get to do that every day in a very, very good company, and they're very receptive to the opportunity it presents within the industry, and in fact, are probably sort of right out there pushing hard to make sure that they stay there. So longer term, which that longer term is getting shorter and shorter. I sort of want to see how these products are going to essentially reshape an industry that's been hasn't had a huge amount of change over the last 20 years, but this is a massive shift. So it's fascinating to be at the forefront of some of that.
Yes, indeed. And good luck to your goals. And
Thank
looking
you.
forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Oh, I don't know if they want to be like me, but curiosity. That's the key thing, especially right now. I think just got to be trying these things as much as you can, and they're actually great partners in that journey because you can actually use the models themselves to learn about the models. So it's fantastic time to be alive.
Fantastic indeed. And Mr. Fergus, kindly recommend a book or books that influence your journey. And thank you for that advice.
So the book I'm going to choose is a book called Thinking Fast Slow, which Daniel Kahneman wrote, famous behavioral economist, psychologist. There's so many ideas in that book that I guess influenced marketing generally, but also the field of psychology introduced us to heuristics and system one, system two type thinking, which inevitably or invariably recently has become even more interesting because of the rise of AI and people trying to understand how these things rationalize. I think that book is, I've read it multiple times and you'll see it crop up all over the place, but probably a seminal piece of work in the field of human behavior.
Yes, and thank you for that recommended book, Mr. Fergus. And what is the role of leadership and governance in these failures? Is it the lack of technical understanding, unrealistic expectation, or impatience for ROI?
Ooh, um, that's a good question. I, I don't think it's governance so much. I think we're not really there yet. Technical understanding, maybe, but you can buy that. Expectation, I think, perhaps at this point is probably where we're at. Is that there's a lot of promise around this technology, a lot of projects that have been kicked off and started, been shuttered, and that's just the nature of any technology. People invest in it heavily at the beginning as they work out, what it is and what it can do. But yeah, and I guess that's somewhat connected to impatience, where ultimately they want to see the ROI on this stuff, and there's a lot of money obviously gone into this industry, and so at some point people are going to want to see a return. But yeah, I think impatience and perhaps a little bit of ignorance at the moment, but that won't be forever.
Mr. Fergus, let's talk about on avoiding the pitfalls or pitfalls. What are the some or one seemingly sensible best practice in traditional software development that can be dangerously misleading when applied to AI product deployment?
Um, I think. Well, I think perhaps the one that's going to be most stark is the UI or the user interface. Software predominantly the user interface has been some sort of, well, especially in the last 30 years, some sort of graphical user interface, and that's how we interact with software. It's how humans speak to hardware through software. And I think what AI is presenting is a new paradigm, a new way for us to interact and communicate with computers. And that won't necessarily mean UI into the same way. So maybe we do it through speech, maybe we do it through text, but there may be no UI so to speak of involved. Now, where there is UI, it may be that UI is fungible. It's just created on the fly as and when you need it. And then it's gone. So I think that's the sort of assuming that UI is the way that we are going to interact or use software is probably the thing that I would be looking at the most.
Mr. Fergus, if you could instill one or core principle in every AI product manager and engineer about building for the real world, what would it be?
speak to people in the real world. So I think
Yes.
it's so easy to sit behind a keyboard and create and build. I'm guilty of it myself, but fundamentally, you get your biggest step changes when you're actually talking to users or customers or the general public, just trying to understand the problems that they're trying to solve, or the problems that they are in sort of solving, but they don't realize that they're doing that. They don't realize they've got a problem. That's actually the bit that I think it's often avoided. But that's probably the most important part of all of it.
Yes, definitely. So, what is the ideal composition of a cross-functional team for sharing an AI product through deployment, and how does it differ from pure research team?
Um, well, the difference between that and say research, right? Research is, they're there right on the edge, so they are out to discover new things. Product isn't about discovering new things; it's about taking what's been discovered and making it. It's pure innovation. It's about making it useful. And I think the difference now in product teams is that they can be a lot flatter, so that the gap between the customer facing support team and engineering even is much shorter, much smaller. I think you've also now got the ability to bring in a sort of mid-tier, we call them a solutions engineer or a solutions architect. It's sort of somebody that is technical, perhaps not a pure developer or engineer, but is able to sit with customers and develop solutions for them using these tools. And I think that's we're able to create these smaller product teams with a much flatter structure to them.
Mr. Fergus, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 third season, and my food 101 in sixth season. This December, geography 101, love letters. Movie 101 review and music 101 are on fourth season, Science 101, Sex 101 in second season, and My Baby Podcast Law 101, Mental Health 101, and Bible Verses 101. And coming this December, Entrepreneur 101. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Fergus, looking forward, will the industry's focus shift from a model centric to a data centric or operation centric development as the key to overcoming these deployment failures?
I think we're, data centric, maybe operation centric. I think human centric is probably where we're headed, which maybe there's some irony in that, but that the agent, if you like, will be the doer, and the human as the orchestrator, if you like. There's going to be some element there for the human to take over. So I think human stroke agent centric. I'm not sure which one's going to win out, but one of them will.
Yes, Mr. Fergus Dyer Smith. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your advocacy, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Yeah. You can check me out on LinkedIn. That's where I tend to hang out the most. And if you want to, look at everything that's going on within sort of AI in the marketing and advertising space, then that's pretty much where I post most of my stuff.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Fergus Dyer Smith, because if you support him, for sure, more and more empowering AI will rise. So, Mr. Fergus, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Monica people, see you soon.